In this assignment, I will be talking about all the different theories and sporting examples that go with these theories. The combination of characteristics of qualities that form an individual's trait theory is a single characteristic of personality that is believed to be a natural force or instinct causing an individual to behave in a predicted way. They are extrovert to introvert and stable to neurotic, I's and X 2 dimensions. An introvert would be shy, like to play individual sports. They are highly concentrated and like to be precise. They're usually calm in an environment as well. And a sporting example of this would be Andy Murray. An example of an extrovert person would be outgoing. They could be arrogant, usually aggressive. They like to play team sports and they're usually successful in what they do. An example of this would be Kevin Peterson. A neurotic personality would be highly aroused, restless, anxious, emotional, and an example of this would be Victoria Pendleton. An example of a sporting example of a stable person. Situational theory believes that behaviour is dependent on your situation or environment, not on your traits. There are two parts to this theory, which is all based around the environment affecting the behaviour of the players. Their personality traits are demonstrated in different ways because of the environment. One is people show their characteristics relevant to the environment, not their personality. People behave through learned behaviour, which would be an example of a coach learning of a player to teach a handball, and they replicate that on a field, and also modelling, so like a person looking up to a footballer who's diving on a football pitch, he would look to do that as well. And examples of this would be introverts might show extroverted traits or aggression or arrogance in a team sport. Players would also model their behaviour based on reinforcement gained. It is a positive response, then they would repeat the behaviour. Sporting examples of this would be aggression shown by introverts in sport examples. And a sporting example would be Mario Balotelli when he tramped on a footballer during a match and kicked him in the face. And also players diving in football and praised by their coach would continue. Interactional theories linking the trait theory and the situational approach is an approach to questions about social cognition, or how one understands other people, that focus on bodily behaviours and environment context rather than mental processes. Situational factors are so strong that it can change behaviour. Players getting frustrated about the result of a player has winded up the player or provoked him to get a reaction. There are many sporting examples, such as David Beckham's red card at the World Cup. Also, Thierry Henry handball, which helped. Martin schematic is a personality theory that says we have 3 different levels within our personality, which are related to each other rather than the personality being one. These 3 levels are psychological core, typical responses, and role-related behaviour. Psychological core means the real you. It contains your beliefs, values, attitudes, and interests, usually seen as constant and stable. Typical responses, usual ways to respond to the world around you or different situations you find yourself in. An example of this would be typical if you got tackled and complained to the ref or got annoyed with a player. Role-related behaviour is determined on your circumstances you find yourself in. Personality would change based on your surroundings. A sporting example of this would be in football, you won't be the same all the way through the game because you may get frustrated at some points. Role-related behaviour is seen as the change or aspect of one's personality, and a sporting example would be of a change behaviour would be Luis Suarez when he bit Branislav Ivanovic on the arm, and that is a change of behaviour in a situation. A sporting example of this was when Zinedine Zidane headbutted Matsurari in a World Cup final. Usually Zinedine is quite cool in a match, but just out of nowhere headbutted a player because they were losing. Psychodynamic theory is made up of conscious and unconscious parts, i.e. instinctive drive, part of your personality that is unconscious, makes you do certain things without thinking. This is to do with your unconscious drive. Your conscious drive is made up of your ego and your superego, which is your moral conscious. The effects of your ego and superego can be seen in sport. For example, a footballer when he refuses to take a penalty because he's afraid he's going to let the team down. Rather than looking at different parts of the personality, the psychodynamic theory tries to look at an individual as a whole. This approach isn't often used in sport as it does not consider the environment. However, in relation to sport, it helps us to understand that not all behaviour is under conscious control of the athlete. Type A versus Type B. Type A lacks patience, has a strong urge for competition, and also has a high desire to achieve goals. This type rushes to complete activities. They usually have high levels of anxiety and can multitask at the same time. A sporting example of this would be playing sports such as rugby and football. Type B is the opposite to Type A. They are more tolerant to others and also more relaxed than Type A. They don't experience as much anxiety and have high levels of imagination and creativity. This can be lazy at points, they're stress-free and laid back. This shows no one type is successful or plays only one type, as they all have their positives and weaknesses. Individual sport is what sport you do at most represents who you are. People that usually play team sports are extroverts, and the ones that play individual sports tend to be more introverted, primarily, but there can be differences, and it isn't always true with all the types of characters and sports you get in a team. Introverts tend to be sports which require concentration, precision, self-motivation, intrigued skills, low arousal levels, individual performance. For example, sports would be golf, snooker, and archery. Extroverts prefer sports which are exciting, team sports, fast-paced, high arousal levels, large motor skills, low concentration, for example, rugby and boxing.